So hello everybody, in our last Bitwig community talk, Dakota number 4, we had as a guest Vincent aka Italo Brutalo, and he told us about his love for old school effect devices from the 80s and 90s, so especially the first digital ones. And yeah, you can guess how this story ends. I had to get some as well because these things are dirt cheap. And yeah, he told us the interesting things about them are the interactivity, especially if you get the one with lots of knobs on it, and that's what I also did. And I decided on a Roland SDE-2000 and the Roland DEP-3. One is a delay effect, the other one is mainly reverb, but can also do some delay and some special effects as well. And you can get devices from that time below 200 euros, sometimes also around 50, depending on how they look. And luckily I could get two devices which look really nice and are still in a very good condition. The Roland SDE-2000 is from the year 1981 and was Roland's first ever digital delay. And this was the same year as the famous TB-303 and the Jupiter 8 were released as well. It had a 3-digit LED, as Roland is still doing nowadays. Oh, sorry for that. And it features a CV input, which was still a thing back then and is again a thing now. Yeah, and it features a modulation section as well, which allows you to produce some chorus and flanging type effects. They also modulate the type of the delay sound, and this can also be changed, the LFO, between two types, namely a sine or a triangle wave. And the device features an 8-bit processor with unbelievable 16 kilobytes of 12-bit RAM memory, and it can do with that 2 delay times, so smaller ones up to 320 milliseconds and higher ones up to 640 milliseconds. But with the longer ones, the audio quality will decrease to 7.2 kilohertz maximum, so very lo-fi, but that's what we're after. And then it features lots of connections, a send return loop, as well as of basically for each button you have on the front you have also a foot switch at the back, and you can toggle them with foot switches, which is pretty cool as well. It looks pretty nice. So the Roland DEP-3 now is from a little bit later year, from 1986, and you see that because it features now MIDI in, no more CV, and it's a scaled down version of the quite popular DEP-5, which you have to pay a bit more if you get it used. For example, this one was only 70 euros, so it's really dirt cheap. It can provide different reverberations like room or hall, but also nice 80s gated reverb, which is especially nice, but also a delay. Finally, the smallest room is more intended as effect device, makes some really funny pingy sounds, which we will hear later on. And yeah, it came, I thought it was a 1U rack, but it turns out the owner built this himself, and it was not put together with screws, but it was riveted, and I really had to use brute force to get the thing out of this housing, and he had to finally get the device itself and to put it into my rack. But the good thing about it is it looked really like new, and it was in a really nice condition. And yeah, looking at what it else can do, it's 16-bit mono in and stereo out, so quite an advantage over the other device. And you can also store presets, and you can also switch these presets via MIDI program change. I prepared a little test project here with some drums, some bass, and some synthi sounds like a pad and some vocals, which is a vocal from the Bitwig library, which I chopped up a bit. And yeah, that's basically it. And there are always two tracks. One is a clean, dry track, and the other one is where I experimented a bit with the delay, the SDE-2000. And we can also listen to that live, where I can move the knobs a bit. But let's first have a listen to the drums. So this is a recording from the Behringer RD9. And let's activate here the effect. So this is a Bitwig Hardware effect, which allows you to use such an external device, actually like a software plugin, but you can only use one instance. That's a drawback. But besides that, you have also a mix knob where you can adjust between the external and internal signal. And here you simply select where is the output, where you send it to the device, and this is a return channel of the device. And you can also adjust here the volume a bit, which makes especially sense since this SDE-2000 is really easy to overdrive, which is also interesting, which we can also have a listen to. But first, let's start with a little bit of low volume. And you can also increase that quickly if you shortly press the second button. And there's also a button to double the delay time, which helps you also to navigate more quickly. For sure, you can calculate what is the correct time. So this is milliseconds for your BPM, but I think it's more challenging to do this by hand, and you'll get also, I think, a little bit more interesting results, which are not that perfect as when you simply calculate the correct value. And what is also interesting is a modulation section, which allows you to modulate the delay signal with an LFO. Which is more interesting with other kinds of sounds, for example with a pad, which we'll hear in a second. So let's go with that. What I recorded when I did that, it sounds like this. So more action. Also, that's interesting if you do some live tweaking, as you just heard, where you have a quick break by just increasing the feedback of the delays. But let's move on to the bass. Bass is from the Hydrosynth, pretty dry, and there I added a very short delay. Let's turn that off and let's turn that on. So you can double it up, makes it a bit thicker. And this is the version I recorded. Well, let's move on to the next one, which is something like this. But we first need to switch that one off and that one on. You can now clearly hear the LFO. And that's what I recorded. Quite similar. And what is especially interesting is, I think, the pad. Because here you can really do some nice stuff with the modulation. Without. Pretty boring with it. And let's just hear the recording. And let's hear everything together. Really nice. I think it gives all of the tracks some kind of special grind. But let's give also a listen here to the reverb. And what is especially interesting on the reverb is the gated reverb, which was really nice in the 80s. And the other ones, we can also have a listen to that. But the rooms and halls, and there's also delay in there, are not that impressive. But what is interesting is that you also have an EQ. So you can EQ the reverb, which is pretty helpful. You can reduce the lows, for example, that it doesn't get too muddy, and also the highs, so it's more in the background. And yeah, you can also store 99 presets with that model, with the DEP-3, but I think it's much more interesting to tweak that directly on the device. But let's hear what we are doing. We have a very simple drum loop here, just a bass drum and a snare, the most boring drum machine sounds I could find in Bitwig. But let's see what we can do with them with the reverb. So here I have the reverb and also the delay as a send effect configured now. So that's also something you can do. So you can then use it with all your tracks. You can all send them in different intensities to the two effects, and that's what we will do here now on the drum machine. So let's select here the snare, and here we can now increase the reverb for the snare. And we directly have the lovely 80s gated reverb. But let's also hear some other sounds, or let's tweak it a bit. Really nice, but let's also give the other reverbs a listen. First, let's go to the room. Also interesting. That's a delay now. Also interesting. But let's go with the gated reverb. So it always takes a bit till the next program becomes active. That's also something worth mentioning. So, and for the kick we use a delay. We use a very short delay for that one. Let's crank that one up. Nice. And what you can also do, you can also combine them. So you don't have to use it as a send. We could throw everything on one channel here. So let's first turn down the sends again. And then put both of them here on that channel. And that one as well. So we have now here the two delays on the drums. Let's get rid of that. It's also interesting to experiment with the order. It's interesting also to hear how it sounds when you overdrive it. Get some grungy lo-fi distortion, digital one, but nevertheless can be helpful for some things. So much for that. What do you think about it? Is it necessary nowadays to still get some old devices or not? Is it just pure nonsense and you are much better with plugins? I think yes, you can have the easier way with plugins, but what you do with these things is you actually tweak the knobs, which I somehow never seem to do with plugins. With plugins, you just dial in a preset and that's it. So I think that's a big advantage of these things. You turn the knobs, and especially it's interesting when you do a recording, still tweaking knobs to get dynamics and modulation and some life into your sound. What do you think? Do you also do such things or not? Is it pure nonsense? Tell me down in the comments, and until next time, make some funky music.